Well, hello everybody. Hello Mersey. I hope you're doing well. What I thought I'd do is just spend a little bit of time tonight talking you through some work that I thought fitted very closely with the project, with the Deepenings project, and with everything that the idea of kind of exploring some of the what I would probably call the kind of deeper topography of Mersey Island. So this is a book that I've got coming out in February. So it's not this is the first time I've been talking about it to any audience, if you like. So hopefully you'll feel a certain kind of privilege on that. But I wanted to, when I was speaking to Jeremy about this, kind of felt that there was a nice fit because it's a book that's very much Essex born. And it's very much about the same process of getting to know landscape and getting to know it kind of closely and intimately. So this is the kind of the local landscape, local spaces that I kind of hang out in, which is a little village called Little Maplestead. And in a sense, obviously the book evolved from this idea of exploring the local landscape and exploring what I would call kind of the sacred spaces of the landscape. And this is the obvious one that you get within the English countryside, which is the local church. So this for me was my kind of starting point. And it was very much a place I would go to, I have to say, not as a practicing Christian, but what I often found was that I was kind of drawn to a space just outside the graveyard where I took this photo from, where for some reason, for the sort of 22 years or so that I've lived in this village, I felt a kind of draw to go to, and it was a place, strangely, where I often felt that I was in closer contact with my father, who died, many years before. And I kind of wanted to explore these ideas of sacred spaces, sacred places in the landscape in this book, Grounded. And one of the key things I think that we have to kind of recognize when we are looking at landscape is how we can be affected by the presence, by the presence of the present, if you like. So this is a Crusader church. It's a lovely church. But it's been sitting on that space, on that ground for about 800 years or so, and quite possibly there was a church before that, an older Saxon church. But the likelihood is, as we're kind of very well aware across Britain, that if you dig down through the layers of the land, you find evidence for even earlier sites. And this was a kind of, as I say, this was a starting point. And I knew about a church just not far from me, which seemed to kind of somewhat exemplify this, a kind of much more sort of beautifully than my own church, where there was this Crusader element, which added a kind of cultural layering to that spot of land of Essex countryside. But this church is Alphamstone Church. I don't know if anyone knows this. This is on the sort of Suffolk Essex borders. And what's remarkable about this site is that it's got a modern church that's in fact got Saxon origins to it. So it's an old church in itself. But there is clear evidence, much clearer evidence than you get elsewhere with churches, of a really much more rich layering to this land, a much more sacred layering through not just the centuries, but the millennia. And one of the amazing things at Alphamstone Church are these sarsen stones that some have argued are evidence of a stone circle. So around the church, and it's a really fascinating place to go to, because around the church there are these large what are basically glacial erratics, so large lumps of stone that were deposited in the Ice Age, well, at the end of the Ice Age, as the glacial moraine left them there. But it seems that at some point, humans have gathered these stones to this site. And what's also kind of interesting is that they're even this is one that just sits on the front, but there's even one of these glacial erratics that sort of forms part of the bedrock of the church itself. So they've been incorporated in. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do was kind of explore this idea, like, try and question, was there really a stone circle in Essex? And I kind of tried to explore as much as possible the archaeological work that's been done on it, which is kind of limited. But what there is good evidence of is activity that at least dates to about 4,000 years ago on this site. So you have, just on the field right next to the church, evidence that was uncovered in Victorian times, as you often do get, of Bronze Age burial urns, and quite a lot of them that date back, at around 4,000 years. So what you start to get is if you do the research and you start to dig down in spaces like this, is you start to get evidence as much as possible of this layering process of history, this sense that this particular site has been sacred not just to Christian worshippers, but to people before that. It was a place that they would go to, that they would recognize for certain reasons as being more vital, more significant on the landscape than others. So particularly with this site, what's fascinating is that it looks right out over the Store Valley, and you can imagine that for people going right back to our kind of hunter-gatherer peoples, 6,000 years ago, and further, this would always have been a site where the geology, the geomorphology, has dictated a significance. So I was kind of, really fascinated and wanting to explore out from the local and explore these ideas kind of further. This idea that on the landscape you have particular places of significance, and as I say, there was a quote that I kind of came across early on by an American writer called Wendell Berry, who you might have come across. He's quite well known for his poetry as well as his essays, and it was a quote that kind of struck me and stuck with me through the entire construction of my work, Grounded. And it was simply this: it just said, "There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places." And I've been reading Ronald Blythe's a book by Ronald Blythe, in which he talked about the black map, where you can go to sites across England, across Britain, where you find these more kind of sinister, if you like, these darker spaces that are still sacred, but that are, if you like, desecrated. And one in particular that is interesting, because in that it's local to us, in Suffolk, is Oldham Common, and this is a memorial stone that was put up on the site of where a Protestant martyr was burned, a preacher called Roland Taylor, back in February 1555. So what you can see, my kind of process, my actions were to start in my most local space in Little Maplestead, and start to kind of wander further into the the landscapes of Essex and Suffolk, and start to recognise that there are around us, kind of all around us, if you like, these patches of land that have some extra significance for us, and that some are more obvious. I mean, this is a much more obvious one, in that quite clearly there's a memorial stone that's been put up there, and it's, if you like, it's only 500 years old. So within what I was doing, which was trying to delve kind of deep into the mists of time, if you will, but as far back into kind of prehistory as I could get, certainly in certain circumstances. This was one of my kind of modern features, but I thought it served a purpose for showing that kind of darker side to the way in which parts of the landscape can be seen as sacred. This then is what's known as the Dagenham Idol, and I don't know if you've come across this. It's a bit further south in Essex. Obviously, Dagenham is kind of in London now. But this is a remarkable little small statue. It's about 1.5 feet high, and it's in the museum in Dagenham. And again, this kind of caught my interest because it was found by a stream in what would have been then peat bog, and is an example for us of these incredible kind of constructs, these sculptures that were forged by human hands for a reason we can't entirely know, but that were clearly used as markers in the landscape in some way. The Dagenham Idol, dating from somewhere about 3,000 years ago, so they're old. These are old things. Now, one of the remarkable things, not going into too much mythological play, but one of the remarkable things about the Dagenham Idol, and you can just about make it out in this image, hopefully, is that it appears as if it was deliberately created with the left eye damaged. And in certain accounts that you get of this incredible statue, this symbolic statue, there is an argument that this is a figure of Odin placed on British soil. It's not always believed by everybody, but it is absolutely fascinating and well worth a visit if you do get down to the south of the county. Just a couple more figures, just to explain something more of the process of understanding the way in which the landscape is memorialized, if you like, and made sacred. So this is from a little bit further north within East Anglia from us. This is what was called the Garboldisham Macehead. So this comes from the Suffolk-Norfolk borders, and it was carved out of antler, out of red deer antler, and it's remarkable for this patterning. It dates like way further back into prehistory. This is I seem to remember it's about 5,000 years old, 3,000 something BC. And what's remarkable about this is it was deliberately placed as a votive offering, was known as a votive offering, where you would, a little bit like we would throw a coin into a fountain. This was the kind of grand equivalent of doing so. And this pattern that's marked out on here is, again, I find it absolutely fascinating, because the best example that you can see of this patterning is actually found at Newgrange in Ireland, which is a Neolithic, very famous Neolithic site. And this dates right back to even slightly earlier, potentially, than that, the dating, from the carbon dating. So you have this object carefully carved and then deposited ritually in the river. And again, the argument from the archaeologists is this is a process by which you kind of sanctify that site, and that they believe this was a crossing point. And it actually was found during excavations in Gulboldisham, where the road crossed over the river. So quite potentially that has been a crossing point for millennia. Unconsciously, we haven't too much time for exploring these ideas of landscape and sacred sites tonight. But I thought I'd just end you a little bit with this figure, just to take us on a little jaunt a bit further afield. This is known as the Lion Man figure, and I think in many ways it's one of the most remarkable archaeological finds of the 20th century. So it has a similar action, if you like, or it has a similar desire from its creator, I would suggest, to something like the Dagenham idol that we saw. But this was created 40,000 years ago. This is one of the most remarkable pieces of Ice Age art that we've discovered. It was found in a cave in southern Germany in 1939 and was pieced together essentially over the next few years. It's a remarkable story in itself that we don't really have the time to go into. But this again appears to have been deliberately placed in the very darkest, deepest recesses of this cave, where our earliest ancestors, really, to emerge from the last ice age, 40,000 years ago, would have lived and would have competed with cave lions. And this figure is remarkable in that it is this apparently some sort of transversion between a human and a lion. Now, obviously, exactly what it was for, we can't know. But it is a fabulous kind of evocative item from much deeper back into time. And I thought I'd just add that in, because this, again, was one of those figures that immediately, once I started looking at things like the Gulboldisham Macehead, the Dagenham idol within our landscape, you get transported to items like this, which I think serve a similar process in kind of sanctifying, making sacred, and representing us as humans in a particular landscape. So that is just a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, if you like, on a Friday night, into some of the aspects that I've been exploring within the landscape.
I just wanted to explain that the fantastic Dr. James Tilley managed to bring one of these with him this evening. So that's what was getting passed around while you were speaking. So, yeah.
Where did you get that? Who made that?
I believe he made it himself.
Did you? Yeah. That is so cool.
I'm just going to pop it very safely back on the table there. And then
that's so nice. What a lovely connection.